Hey class, in this video we are going to do our last demo for our web project. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go over how to embed media on a website. This actually isn't really necessary for this project, but some of you guys might want to add images or other things to your story. But it is going to be important for setting up our final project, which we'll get started with next week. So in this demo, I'm just going to go over how to put an image, an audio, and a video file into the website. These ones, each one of these is a little bit different, but they're kind of similar. And it's really, honestly not too difficult, so it should be pretty quick. But it's an important thing to cover before we wrap up our web unit. At the end of the video, I'll go over, updating your website on GitHub and then publishing a new link. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna smaller view, and let's see. So let's open up our website project. I'm gonna open up Sublime Text. And as we saw last time, Sublime will open up to where we left off last time. So we've already got all of our files open. But if you don't see this, just go to File and go to Open Folder, and then look for your web folder. So mine is in my MMP 100 folder, and there's my web project. I'll just select that, and it's going to open up this window with my index.html, my style.css, and then my story folder. And so let's close out the other one that we had open. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add some media to our project. And so I'll do a couple examples with each type of media, and we'll look at adding it on different pages just so we can see what that might look like. So I'm just going to use the media that I created in our other units. For the final project and for this project, if you want to use media, you can create new media, and you can update or make changes to the stuff that you've created before. It kind of depends on what type of project you want to make, but for the example, I'm just going to use things that I've already made. I'm not going to go through the process of making new stuff. So what I'll do is go to the file explorer, and I'm just going to get copies of the projects, the exported files that I've made for previous projects, and I'm going to put them into my web folder. So I'm going to go into the web folder first, and I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call this media. And I'll just put all the media files in here. You could call this different things. Sometimes people will call this like assets. Sometimes if you have a lot of media, you might separate it into images and video. But I'm just going to call this media just to keep it simple. And I'm going to make copies of each one of my projects and put them in here. So I'm going to open a new Finder window in a new tab. And I'll start with my image project. So I'll find the output of my final image right there. And I'll just copy this so I can copy using the button in Windows. I can also right click and copy here, or I can hit Control C. In Mac, you can do the same thing. You can right click and copy, or you can hit Command C. And then I'll go back to my media folder and just paste that in. So I don't want to delete the original image because maybe I'll move my folder somewhere. So I just want to keep everything intact. So then I'll go to my audio project and I'll find my audio final. So that's right there. I'll copy that and then paste it in here. And finally, I'll go to my animation folder and find my final version of my animation. I'll copy that and paste it in here. So I just want a copy of each one of the exported files from the final version of each one of my projects. We're going to embed these on different pages in our website just so we can see what the syntax looks like and the structure looks like. So let's add our image on the index.html. So I've got image.html open, and I'm just going to add an image down here at the bottom. So let's open this file in the browser so we can preview what this is going to look like. And so we've got our website here with our links, and we're just going to add a little image at the bottom. You could add the image at the top or in the middle. It doesn't really matter where you add the image, but we just want to add it somewhere in here. So I'm going to go back to Sublime, And so to add an image, I'm going to use a IMG tag. So this is abbreviation for image. I'm not actually sure why this tag is abbreviated because the other media tags aren't, but maybe it's from an earlier version of HTML. And with my image tag, there's no content in the middle, so I don't need a closing image tag. Notice when I try to make a closing tag, Sublime thinks I'm trying to close this div, which is already closed. So I don't need any closing tag for the image. For the other media tags, we do need those, so it's not always super consistent. But a lot of HTML standards were kind of introduced at different points throughout the development process of the language. So some things are a little bit varied. So to add the image, I just do the IMG tag, and then I can add a source attribute. SRC is short for source, and this is just the source file that I want to load. So I use the equals like I do with an attribute, and then my quotation marks. And then just like I made my href to my other pages, I'm going to make a link to my media. So I'm going to go into the media folder first. So I'll type in media, and this has to match exactly as usual. So if I use an uppercase M or a lowercase m, all those things are important. And then I'm going to put a slash to indicate that that's a folder. And then for my final image, I'm just going to type in the name of the exported image. I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to reload the page. And there we see our image. It looks pretty good, but we have a couple problems. One is that the image is very large. And so there's a couple ways to fix this. I'll go over those. So there's our image, and it doesn't really fit inside of our document. So we're going to fix that in a second. Before we do that, usually with media like an image, another thing that we want to do is add something called alt text. Alt text is basically some text that will appear if the image is missing, or if somebody who is vision impaired is viewing your website or listening to your website through a screen reader or something like that. The alt text will be read in the place of the image. So we don't want the image to be missed by people who can't see it. So I'm going to put alt here, and I'll just say an image of a pigeon hanging out with a lizard. So for the alt text, you can just put a description of what media is there so that somebody who's using a screen reader or something like that will hear that description. So the next thing we want to do is add another attribute. So there's two ways to change the width of the image. One is through CSS, but we can also just add a value right inside the image. So if you just want to edit the image itself, it might be easier to do this. If you have a lot of images and you want them all to take the same edit, you might want to use CSS. So if I put width here and I put a number like 100, we'll see that the image is going to fit the pixels of that width. Another thing I could do is say 100%. This way, the image is going to fill 100% of the available space. So that way, if you change the overall size of the website, which is set by the container, if I, change this to 500 pixels, our image will change with that. So when you're working with images and other media, sometimes using percentages is easier than using an exact pixel number. You might set the image to the right pixel number, but then your website design might change later. So we can set it directly in here. We can also set it through CSS. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to open up style.css. And so to do this, we can just add img, and we can say width is 100%. And this will have the same effect, but it'll apply to every image on the page. So if we had two images, and I'm just going to make a copy of this same image. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it. We had two images. You'll see that it applies to both images. Whereas the first method that we used would only apply to this one image. So it kind of depends on how many images you're using and what your goals for the overall design of the site are. But I'm going to leave that in the CSS, and I'll delete this extra image. All right, so there's our image. We have a nice image on our homepage now. And so let's add a couple other pieces of media. So maybe for the animator page, I'll add my animation. And for the coder page, I'll add my audio. It's not really relevant because this is just a demo, but that kind of makes sense. So let's go to the animator page. and we'll add our animation. So I'm gonna go and open up the animator page. And to add the animation is an MP4, which is a video format. So we're gonna use a slightly different process. So I'm gonna put video. And so video is the tag we use to add video. And video actually does have a closing tag. And the reason for that is, it doesn't happen that much these days, but in the past, sometimes video was not supported by a website. And so you could put HTML in between the tags that would appear if the video isn't supported. So I'm gonna put a paragraph tag here and say, video is not supported. And this works a little bit like our alt text in the sense that it shows up if there's no support for that piece of media. So in our video, we can put a source. And now, since we're in, here's our tricky folder system thing. So this is a good chance to review. We're in the story folder. So we can't see the media folder. So as usual, we have to go back. We have to ... and / we have to go back and then go in the media folder and then get our video. So this is going to be a slightly more complicated path than what we've done before. I'm going to do ... and then go to media. And then the name of my video file is happiness.mp4. So now my video should load. If you don't see the video load, you may, have missed the ... If you just have media or something like that, you probably just won't see anything here. So you can see there's a video element and it does take up some space, but it's not loading the media. So we don't see anything there. So we can, so we have a couple issues. We can resize the video, but we also, as it stands, let's bring this back. So let's put the ... back in there and reload. So you can see where the video is, but there's no way to play it. And so we can resize it, but then we're also gonna have to fix the playback. So again, I can do this a couple ways. I can add a width attribute here. I could say width equals 100%. And so that will match our video to the size of the page. So I think that's good. We can do it multiple different ways. So you can see that's just an attribute inside of our video tag. So we can do it multiple different ways. You could put it in the CSS or you could put it in your HTML. I'll leave it here just as an example. But now we can't play the video. So there's another attribute that we have to add. This is just the controls attribute. This doesn't actually have a value. It just is an attribute that if we put it in there, we'll add our video controls. And it doesn't have controls by default because you could program other parts of your website to play the video, and you might want to do that. But if we add that controls in there, then we'll be able to play the video. So now we can see the video playback on the website, and that looks pretty good. So let's add our audio piece, and that'll be our last piece of media. So I'm going to go over to the coder page. And so I'll open up coder.html. And again, I'm putting all these at the bottom, but they could really go anywhere. Maybe just as an example, I'll put this one in the middle. So I'll put this in between my header and my paragraph, especially since the audio doesn't take up as much space. So for audio, I just use the audio tag. This one looks a little bit more like video. It also has a closing tag for the same reason. You might have something here that says audio is not supported. This is pretty uncommon these days, but we still can add that in there if we want to. I didn't put a paragraph tag, but you don't really need a paragraph tag here. You can leave it as is. So then for our audio, it basically works exactly like our video. We're gonna want a source. And so the source, again, we have to go back to the main folder and then go to media and then go to audio_final.mp3. And then I'm not as worried about the size of this one because it's just gonna fill whatever space is available. It doesn't have like an image size. But we do need the controls. So I'll put the controls in there. And now we should see there's our controls. And we can hear our audio embedded on our webpage. And it kind of looks similar to, what we posted on the Open Lab. So you can kind of start to see how all of these things kind of fit together and use the same technologies. All right, great. So now we have an image, we have a video, and we have audio. So those are the 3 different types of media we've exported. We also did an animated GIF, which you could embed like an image. So if you wanted to, actually that's a good example. Why don't we put our animated GIF on here as well while we're at it. So I'll go back to animation. We have this animated GIF. So I'll copy this. So I've copied my animated GIF. Let's go back to the HTML, index.html, and I'll add this in here. So the animated GIF uses an image tag, even though it's animated. So let's see that working. And since we use CSS, this should take on the same width as our first image. So there we see the animated GIF, and that looks pretty good. So I'll put some alt text here and animation of a circle spiraling. And there we go, we've got our image tag. All right. So we've embedded all the different types of media that we've learned how to make, and we've got our website. And so now we'll just update our website on GitHub, and then we'll submit a new version. So for you guys, again, for the website project, you don't have to use media, but you can if you want to. So if you want to add images or animations or anything else to your project, this is how you can do it. For the website project, what I'm more concerned with is the working HTML and CSS, as well as the story component. So those are the things you should really be focusing on. But if you think that images or videos or audio would help your story, you can add those in here. And then when we move on to the final project next week, we'll really be using the stuff that we just learned in this video. So I'm going to go over to GitHub, and I'm going to update my website. So I'm going to go to website project, and again, I'm just going to drag and drop. Just want to make sure that we're, adding stuff to the right place. So I'm going to go to my main web folder, and I can just grab the whole thing and drag it on here. So remember, we want to see our index.html, style.css, and our other folders all on the main folder here. So I'm going to add this update. I'm going to write a commit change. So I'm going to say adds media and commit changes. And this is going to process for a moment, but once it's done, we'll do some documentation, and we will post that on the Open Lab. I'll pause while it's updating. All right, so my website is updated, and so let's go through the submission process. This is going to be for the website project, so this isn't a blog post. This is our final version of our website. So I'm going to go over to settings and go to pages, and then I'm going to go to the site here. So we can see this is the final version of the site. It should be publicly available online. And then we also need to submit our code here. And I want to do a little bit of documentation. So I'm going to move this. Oh, whoops. Let's open that again. I'm going to move this window out like this. And I'm just going to take some screenshots of each one of my pages. So I'm actually going to make the page a little smaller so it matches my design a little bit better. And then I'm going to make some screenshots. So I'm going to use the Xbox game bar for this. On Mac, you can use the screenshot app, and also include some screenshot resources that I'll add on Brightspace. So I'm going to hit Windows G, and that should bring up the game bar. And you won't be able to see this, but I'll talk about what I'm doing. So I'm just going to take a capture here. And so I've got a new capture that shows the image. And then I'm going to go to the animator page and open up the game bar again and capture again. And then I'm going to go to the coder page. So we want to capture everything that we created for the website for our final documentation. Okay, so I've got 3 images. For your website, you may have more if you've done 5 pages or more than that. And so now I'm just going to open up the image gallery on my computer, and we'll see those screenshots along with some other screenshots that I've taken. So we can see the image screenshot here, the video here, and the audio one there. All right, so we've done some documentation. Let's go over to the Open Lab and let's go to the web project and just review what we need to submit for this final project submission or final web submission. So just a screen capture of the website, URL for the published version of the project, URL for the code on GitHub, and then our project statement as usual. So the title of the project, semester and year, software and languages used, a 3 to 4 sentence description, and that's it. If you used images that were, Creative Commons licensed or other things like that, make sure to include that as well. But this is basically what we need. So let's go up to the top and create a new post. And we'll say my final website. And for the categories, let's choose website. And so let's start with our images. It's nice to start with something visual. So I'll just drag and drop these image captures here. Okay, and then for the project title, I'm just going to put choose your own adventure. You can put the title of the project that you created here. This is Spring 2025 and is created with HTML, CSS, and GitHub. And then 3 to 4 sentence description of your project. So in my choose your own adventure story, the reader can choose to go down the path of an animator or a coder. So that's just an example. You can elaborate here 3 to 4 sentences about the concept for your story, anything that was interesting about the process or anything you did to create the project that the reader might want to know about. And then we have a link to the live project, and that's going to be the website here. So I'm just going to go to the home page and I'll link there. And then a link to GitHub. And this is where we'll be able to see your files. And that's it. That's everything that we need for our final website project. I'm going to publish this now. And remember, for this one, there's no edit files. So you just have to submit a link to the Open Lab post. As long as your GitHub works and I can see your files on there, that's what I'll do to evaluate your files. So I'm going to copy the link here. And I'm going to go to assignments. And for this one, remember, we have to scroll all the way down to project 4, which is web. Take a look at the rubric and make sure you've got everything required there. And then you can paste in your link and submit. So that's it for the web project. So that's our final unit. Next week, we're going to be moving on to working with, working on our final project. So the final project, again, will combine everything that we've worked on so far. So if you have any questions with submitting this project, let me know. We can go over it. And I'll see you guys in the next video.